The scripture today is from the tail end of the chapter 4 of Mark, an entire chapter of parables. This is the last of the parables in that chapter. With many such parables, Jesus spoke the word to them as they were able to hear it. He did not speak to them, the people, except in parables, but he explained everything in private to his disciples. On that day when evening had come, he said to them, "Let's go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd behind, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. Other boats were with him. A great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat so that the boat was already being swamped. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" He woke up, rebuked the wind, and he said to the sea, "Peace, be still." Then the wind ceased, and there was a dead calm. He said to them, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great awe and said to one another, "Who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him?" It's the end of Mark, and Mark 4, and the end of our scripture.
Stories. Each is a treasure filled with drama, human events, and interaction. Some of us, having heard these stories from the time we were children, might not listen as closely anymore. Or, on the other hand, perhaps we will listen with a new attentiveness, with new insight. As adults, we want to trust that the Bible stories speak a truth which will sustain us. Yet many of us, much of the time, aren't sure what they're saying or claiming or asking of us with their simple imagery. And most of us no longer deeply immerse ourselves in the story as a child does, and as we've learned in our Worship and Wonder Sunday school classes with the kids. They immerse themselves so much, body and soul, in what they hear. We no longer hear the waves crash against the sides of the ship, or sense the fright and chaos around us, or feel the water soak our ankles and then our knees as it fills up the boat. We don't experience the calm and mysterious quiet as the elements of nature and our own body then suddenly relax. Now, most of us no longer accept the stories as historical happenings completely. Could Jesus's actions really be the feats of a godly magician, displaying the power to control the elements? Are we supposed to accept that the disciples, fishermen who knew the sea and its power to destroy, would have assumed that their teacher, though asleep at the stern, could stop the wind and the waves? Are we to believe that Jesus's question, "Have you still no faith?" suggests that if the disciples really had sufficient faith, they would know that in every situation with Jesus in your boat, everything will work out fine? We're grown-ups now. We know that good and faithful people have terrible tragedies in their lives. Even with Jesus in their boat, they drown in floods, they die in collapsing buildings, they contract lethal diseases, they're victims of violent crimes. So how might we understand what Jesus is doing here? What really he is inviting us to share with him? What he's teaching us about how to live faithfully without fear? Well, I included the two verses that Mark's apprentice today, that Mark spoke preceding the story of the storm at sea in the boat. After a series of earlier teachings and parables shared with the crowds that gathered around Jesus, we find this statement: "With many such parables, he spoke to them as they were able to hear it." He did not speak to them except in parables, but he explained everything to his disciples. Well, however each of us approach a story like today's, and that is between us and our God, we know that stories were the chosen manner of teaching. He did not give the people an already digested truth. He was not acting as a mother bird, chewing up the food and pouring it into their hungry mouths. It was through stories that Jesus invited people to walk or to sail with him into a deeper reality. Jesus believed that faith was a penultimate capacity to sense the deeper rhythms in life around us and life within us, under everything. And this capacity isn't just a given in life. It has to be cultivated, like every good thing. Through patient listening, by allowing our experiences of suffering or awe to transform us, by taking the value of another's experience or perspective, in finding a stillness within which guides us to a better way. We cultivate that capacity when we feel compassion for others and work to alleviate their suffering, when we develop the capacity for devotion and practice that devotion. This then is faith, rather than a puppet-like adherence to letter and law. And within this manner of faith, we find courage and joy, humility, deeper purpose, and peace. Now I'm going to pause for a minute and make sure things are going okay in the tech department. Still, I can't figure what it is unless it is the papers touching the Bible. Tell me, I thought you all looked concerned. That's why I stopped to, okay, let's keep going. Do this if it improves. And this, you all aren't noticing that, right? It's the folks at home that. So often our egos try to order our lives. Most of us have gotten pretty good at this ordering part of life. And there's no denying that the mind's ego strength serves us in many aspects of our life. Our capacity to create, to invent, to build, to heal, to govern, to guide, to sustain others and ourselves. On the other hand, it often takes over, and the lovely attentiveness of awed unknowing, which I've spoken about last week, I believe, is lost. Jesus taught over and over that order, even order, must be dynamic. Order kills vitality when it is static. It must develop and grow and change as life demands it. We aren't the same people we were 10 years ago, or 20, or 30, or will be in another 10. Jesus is not a holy idol we turn to pave the way for us. He's not just a personal, albeit friend, not just an example of the right way to live. The depth of Jesus's life and work and teachings brings a cosmic perspective, demanding transformation of our souls and our spirits. And this perspective, and don't worry if you know what it means, because emerge ourselves in it. It must be learned through living. Like when we come through a life crisis with surprising new vision and understanding, with deeper love, wider hope. When life breaks you down beyond what you can know or control with your expertise, when your vessel of order is swamped and sinking and the winds blow you into disorientation, you must let go and embrace a new reality. And suddenly time and purpose are altered, and heaven drops down into your life, and your perspectives and your priorities radically change. Before this, you might have defended yourself against all that provoked fear or threatened, no matter how deadening that defensiveness was to your life. Before this, your meaning in life may have begun to shrink to mere survival. And a lot of folks have to live that way these days. Now, having let go of the fantasy of complete control, you let out the sail and let the winds of change help you. In their moment of fear and desperation, the disciples were shocked and maybe even annoyed that Jesus went on sleeping comfortably. Didn't he care about them? Most of us know that when we are in anxious times of our lives, which is pretty much most of the time for a lot, overwhelmed with finances, health crises, relationship troubles, the violent state of the world, the deep injustice that reigns, we often cannot sleep. The widespread anxiety in us and around us and our fellow human beings is hinted at by the shelves of sleep aids in the grocery store, the aisles of alcoholic beverages in the liquor store, the lines at the pharmacy of people who feel sick in heart and mind, not just body, the dispensaries that offer their wares, the counseling offices full of suffering souls. Many seek solace from their rampant anxiety in these ways. And there is a powerful, I don't know whether to call it a poem or an essay, so I'm going to call it a poem essay, that came back to my mind when I read the story of Jesus calming the sea. Our call to worship today is from this essay, and Mark took a lot of words out, so I can just sit down. Thank you. The poem, or essay, is entitled "We Were Meant for These Times," written by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. The image of the swamped boat is illumined in our time by the image of the great ship, and I've chosen a few different lines. Didn't you say you were a believer? Didn't you say you pledged to listen to a voice greater? Didn't you ask for grace? Don't you remember that to be in grace means to submit to the voice greater? One of the most calming and powerful actions you can do to intervene in a stormy world is to stand up and show your soul. Soul on deck shines like gold in dark times. That's the important line, I think. Struggling souls catch light from other souls who are fully lit and willing to show it. If you would like to help calm the tumult, this is one of the strongest things you can do. The good words we say, the good deeds we do are not ours. They are the words and the deeds of the one who brought us here. In that spirit, I hope you will write this on your wall. When a great ship is in harbor and moored, it is safe. There can be no doubt. But that is not what great ships are built for. When we witness a soul on deck in the darkness of the dark times, shining like gold, we're given hope that our own souls may catch their light. As already mentioned, Reverend Rob Lapp, the first pastor of our church, now nearing 90, will preach in the congregation for 2 weeks, July 25th. He's one such soul who spent much of his life and ministry creating safe housing for low-income people in the Denver area. I think it's like 11 or 12 now, huge facilities where, and you can call it low income, but what it means is people that make, well, policemen and teachers and really moderate income that's now in the face of property values. It's low income. I hope you'll come out to hear Rob and to reverence this life well lived. Many such souls fill my heart and fill my sermons with their profound wisdom and inspiration. Today, I invite all of you to think of some of these people in your life. We do that in confirmation too, remember that, guys? Think of the people that inspired you. Perhaps we can share some of their stories together and consider how their good words and their deeds have supported our faith. Well, today, churches and church-related organizations and those inspired by their faith span the globe, working diligently to stop hunger, to confront injustice, to curb gun violence, to help refugees, to educate children, to house the homeless, to work for peace. This week, a group of adults and children, and youth, not children, a group of adults and youth from our congregation will travel to Alamosa, to La Puente, a nonprofit organization which has been serving impoverished families in Colorado's San Luis Valley for 4 decades, providing food and shelter, advocacy for the homeless and those in crisis. Our group, and I like this because that was a line in the call to worship as well. Let me say it. Our group doesn't know exactly how they will be asked to serve this summer. And I saw that, I read that, I heard that differently when Mark was reading the call to worship today. And they will only find out what they're called to do when they arrive. In the past, we have fixed and served meals, built fences, planted gardens, painted buildings, worked in the thrift store sorting clothes, worked in the little school with the children, interacted with the people, and many more things. Over the years on these mission trips to Alamosa, the small but important acts of reaching out beyond themselves and learning and taking in the very different world that others live in have changed and enriched the hearts and lives of our youth and adults. So, how about the 4 of you who are here? Just stand up where you are, and I'm going to say these last few words. One Sabbath day, in the synagogue in Nazareth, Jesus read from the book of Isaiah to all who were gathered. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and the recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. The Bible's word for one who goes on a mission is apostle. Did you know that you were an apostle? Maybe not one of the 12. Auxiliary apostles, which is the Greek way of saying one who is sent. Today we send a boy with our prayers, each a shining soul on deck. Blessings. Yes, we know that there's seemingly insurmountable evil of racism and greed in our world, and the suffering that is brought on by them can overwhelm all of us, just kind of stop us in our tracks. But in the spirit of the one who brought us here, all of us can find hope and promise in the small part we play to bring compassion and justice into God's world. If we will simply get in the boat with Jesus, leave the safety of the harbor, set sail with the shining souls of both our time and the past, we can begin to trust our ability to navigate the choppy waters and darkness of life's storms. This is the way we stay afloat in life. This is the way to true peace and purpose. Amen.